And I've had clients reach out to them and say, Tony, this house has been up for 60, 90 days. What's wrong with it? Why isn't it sold? What are we missing here? So I thought it'd be interesting if we looked at it from a seller's perspective. I think obviously we harp on this all the time. You know, your house has the A, show well, and B, be priced well.
Welcome to the Ottawa Property Podcast with your hosts Tony McNeil and Adolfo Alvarenga. Each week, they'll take a look at what's happening in the Ottawa real estate market and offer practical advice and insights for listeners. From market updates to success stories, they cover it all. Whether you're a first-time homebuyer, a seasoned investor, or just curious about the property landscape in Canada's capital, they've got you covered. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's get into it.
Everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Ottawa Property Podcast. My name is Tony McNeil. I'm a local realtor based here in Ottawa.
He's also our host, ladies and gentlemen.
Co-host, and joined always is my other co-host, Adolfo Alvarenga, level 2 mortgage agent with the Pro Mortgages here in Ottawa as well. Welcome back. If you're following on the audio platforms, give us a like, drop us a comment, let us know what you think. We always read your comments and feedback, and we've been a little bit of a hiatus the last couple of weeks, dealing with some illness and you being away. I think so, right?
Yeah, I was on a trip for my birthday.
Yeah, like holy cow, like, and now we're back. C'est la vie. What's going on, Adolfo?
It's busy weeks.
Apparently
busy weeks. Like, how's the eye? Good.
Yeah. For those that don't know, and why would you know? I got pink eye for the first time. And
that's why the podcast has been MIA for a bit. We didn't want him to be in front of camera with a big eye.
It's funny, you know. It's everyone's pink eye. I've had that before. How many times? I haven't had it. This is the first time for me. And my daughter is 2, and I'm getting a lot of firsts. People are like, oh, you should have an immune system built by now. I'm like, you have no idea what this child brings home.
You have no idea. Unless you're a parent, you have no idea. That is totally true.
I don't have. There's not enough time in this podcast to disdain for being sick. But either way, no, I'm feeling good, man. How was your trip?
That's good, man. Trip was very good. Down in Florida, a lot of fun, a lot of cycling, sun weather. We actually had an episode about this. Yeah, we did before it. We can't even keep track of our own episodes.
There's just so many at this point, right? This is episode 4, I think. Like, we're losing track
already. But honestly, it was good.
To talk about today.
Yeah.
Catch up. We'll get right into it.
Let's go. What have you been seeing this last few weeks? You've had a lot of movement lately.
The team has been busy.
That's interesting. So then, before you start, would you say that this was cost because of the rate? Because October 23rd to now, it's only been a couple of weeks.
I mean, there's definitely some influence in there for sure.
Yeah. Some more motivated buyers.
Yeah. The same week we had a rate decrease was the same week I sold a listing I had that was sitting up for 30 plus days.
Mm-hmm.
Same couple, I'm helping them on the buy side, and we're seeing, we'll book a showing for a Sunday, and then Friday it's sold.
Nice. Hold on, you had a booking for the other way around. So you were supposed to see it Sunday, but then it sold Friday.
Happened a couple of times.
Oh wow! So there is a lot of movement.
Town, so there's a lot of logistics that go into these showings. So it's not like we can just drop everything and get there most of the time. So I think the activity's picking up, and like I said, from a team perspective, we've had a lot of ends done this week.
Okay, that's good.
I think, and I've said this maybe in an episode, but the deals that are going to be done before the end of the year are always going to happen, up until the 3rd week in November.
Yeah.
So we're kind of hitting
that threshold.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, in December. I think we'll see a little bit of that drop off.
Mm-hmm.
With that being said, if something it looks good, is priced right, it is going to sell. And we'll kind of get into that a little later in the episode about, what sellers could be doing, potentially if your property hasn't sold yet. And you're kind of wondering, am I going to wait till 2025, or am I doing everything in my power to make sure my property gets sold?
For sure.
We'll talk a little bit more about that, but
because that's very important, especially towards the end of the year. It's very important.
Well, you're kind of at a fork in the road, right?
Yeah.
So what about you? Have you been busy?
Oh man, it's been a lot of movement. It's actually one of the things that every rate announcement we always get the questions like, did my rates go down? Does my rates go down? So that's one of the things that I would want to tackle, and it's like, surprisingly, variable rate has started to come down, but the bonds have done the opposite.
Yeah, fixed have gone up, right?
Fixed have gone up, and the interesting aspect, not by a lot, obviously, the bond, like it's kind of that like up and down movement that's been happening lately. Like it doesn't go up a lot, it doesn't come down a lot. Like it just kind of goes up and then the next day down and then somewhat, right? A lot of it had to do with Trump being elected. It changed the market. It made movements and stuff like that, and we haven't seen the bonds come down back, and which is interesting because you would assume, or at least most clientele, most the population assumes that as variable rates come down, the Bank of Canada does an announcement to get rates down, that the fixed rates would just follow suit.
Sure.
But it's not really the case at this moment. So it's a particular conversation that we have with clients, and it's one of those things that we don't really know. In a way, it's like if you're able and you have some risk and you're able to qualify on a variable, like it actually be a good choice right now to kind of ride the wave down if you had to. However, we don't know when things are going to change.
Yeah.
Like inflation numbers came out today. We were at 1.6 in October. We're up at 2%. They were estimating it was going to go up to 1.9. So we're just a little bit off. But that is also having the conversation of like, oh, well, people are betting on another 0.5 drop in December. This might change things, and it might be 0.25. But then unemployment numbers come out in a few weeks.
They change everything again.
Exactly. So it's like it's unknown in a way.
Yeah, I think
it's a week by week.
It is, you know, and I was listening to something interesting this morning, and it was exactly that. You know, back to the U.S. election. You know, regardless of who wins, and it goes doubly in our country as well, regardless of who wins, a lot of economic swings in markets and stock markets and real estate markets, they kind of do a pause until this transfer of power happens. They want to see, you know, what policies the next government's bringing in, and a lot of people don't want to make massive real estate or stock decisions in that couple of months window between. So it's interesting to see our bond rates kind of tick up a bit, maybe because we're kind of worried that we're going to see high tariffs on a lot of our imports or exports, to the U.S.
It's hard to know. It's and he doesn't really, like, sure, he got elected in November, but it's not like he takes over until January.
Yeah, but I mean,
it's a trigger already.
It's the almighty U.S. dollar, right? You know,
well, our currency also
our biggest trading partner in the world, so it affects us whether we want to believe it or not.
Yeah.
We're heavily affected by it. So
totally.
Again, it doesn't matter who wins or loses. It would have reacted somewhat similar. In any kind of regard. So inflation numbers are up. One thing I did learn, it's Canada and Iceland are the only two countries that include housing in their inflation numbers.
Oh, really? Huh. I didn't know that.
Fact check.
Fun fact.
Yeah,
hey.
Yeah. So again, like, because we've been saying this the whole year as inflation has been ticking down, if we were in that 2.8, 2.9, 3 point whatever, if you took the housing numbers out of that,
would be way less.
2%,
yeah.
Right?
But
so
even
now with the housing numbers out of it, I'm sure we're probably closer to like low ones or one or maybe sub one.
I'm actually curious, like, and maybe we'll check this out. Why is it that they're the only two countries that do that? You know, why do we include
why do we drive
housing
on the right side of the road instead of the left? I don't know. It's honestly,
it's true.
It could be something as silly as that. We should check it. We'll check into that.
And then we'll get into feet and inches and like measurements and kilometers and miles and
for sure. But again, if you take those numbers out of there, we're still into that sweet spot, and 2% is still the target rate that they've been kind of honing in on this entire year. I don't think there's any real reason to panic yet, but I do think that you're correct. I know that I will backtrack and say that I was betting 50% or 50 basis point cut December 7th.
Yeah. What does your crystal ball say? 25?
So.
Okay. 25. I'm going to ask you again like a week before, and we'll see where that goes. Yeah. But this is what I'm saying is that you can't really predict what's going to happen. Like I've had a good friend who's a client who, like, they reached out to me because they locked in about 2 years ago on a 3.
Okay.
And they have 1 more year to pay. But they're considering breaking it now to see what the penalty would be. to get the lower rate right now and not necessarily pay that extra year. That has its pros and cons. I always say it as like, if the penalty is less than what your savings on interest would be, go for it.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's not, which 80% of the time is not, then yes, you're paying a higher rate, but then you wouldn't be paying a penalty for no reason. Right. You know, the only times that I could say like, okay, break the mortgages and pay the penalty is if you are somehow benefiting by the lower payments, less interest that you're paying, that outweighs the penalty. Or if you have debt that you have to pay off, credit cards, car payments, anything like that, that the interest is just doesn't make sense, and it's better for you to pay it off. So that makes sense. But that's where like a lot of conversations that we're having are like, hey, I'm thinking of breaking my mortgage. This is where I'm at. And the first things foremost is find out what your penalty would be if you were to break the mortgage as of today.
You got that FOMO because everyone's getting these lower interest rates now, right? They just assume that if they can swap to a lesser rate, it would make more sense. But it's not always the case, like you said. With penalties and stuff, it might be actually detrimental. You're better off maybe just riding out the wave last year, and then,
or the year before even too. But like you have about we could say a year left in terms and stuff like that. So which is going to be interesting because next year, I know we've talked about this a lot in other episodes. It's like next year is when most of the renewals are coming up from COVID, 2025. So that's going to be key. So, but those are conversations I've been having this week. Like, okay, what's going to happen with the penalties? What's going to happen with the rates? Variables going down. How come the fixed rates are not going down? Like it's kind of where we are at.
I think, are we at that point? Because like, let's look at it. If you look at the long term, let's say the 10-year spread of fixed versus variable has historically been lower than fixed, right?
This is probably one of the first times that it's been the opposite.
Exactly.
Like that, this anomaly, what's the word? Anomaly. There we go. For the last few years.
And my point is that if history is to repeat itself, and it likely will, and that variable rate will keep coming down, let's say the Bank of Canada lands at like a 2-point-something overnight lending rate, then the fixed kind of have to stop at some point. They can't keep coming down and down and down.
Yeah.
The variable will inevitably pass the fixed and be lower again.
It could potentially happen, and we could potentially see that happen next year.
That's what I'm saying. So is our fixed close to the bottom as it is? We may not have much more room there.
It's hard to say, because it's hard to say what the market's going to react. Like I said, like a few weeks ago, I could have told you the rates are going to keep going down, and then it just halted, started going up. So it's hard to predict. There's no crystal ball of like, oh, this is what's going to happen for sure.
I think we're close to that bottom.
Do you think so?
Yes, I think so. I think we're just like, we're not going to get back to those historic low fixed. We have to get used to this new rate environment and just be thankful that we're not like, in the 5s and 6s on this stuff anymore, right? So it's how fast we've forgotten that too. And it's like, hey, we were in the high 5s, the low 6s, and now we're back down to the mid 4s, high 3s. Let's say.
Yeah. No. Mid 4s.
How quickly we forgot that they were 2% higher only a few months ago. And we're always like, oh, but they'll go lower though. I'm willing to ride it out.
For sure. But then also how quickly people forget the variable shock too, right? True. It's like now they're kind of like considering, okay, we'll go on the variable. And like it's call it the beginning of the year. You ask somebody who's like, oh, maybe you consider variable.
Yeah, no kidding.
Crickets.
Take that away from
Crickets, yeah. Exactly. And it's also interesting too, because I don't know if viewers or listeners would know this, but if you go on a variable rate, you're able to lock that in at any point.
Sure.
If you wanted to.
Yeah.
If you feel that the rates are going to start going back up in terms of variable rate, the prime, it's a choice that you could make and be like, call your financial institution and be like, I want to lock in the rate now. Obviously, if things change and then it start going back down, you can't go back.
No.
But if for whatever reason we have a halt and then it starts to go back up, you're able to do so, right?
I think the hardest part, again, for most people in this type of market and the way prices have gone, is just still qualifying for that variable rate.
Totally.
So if you can qualify, I think it's worth the conversation.
Totally. But think about it in terms, I say it more for the viewers that are like coming to renewals.
Yeah, totally. It's worth a conversation.
Because they've already qualified at that point. They don't need to requalify at renewal. They can stay with their financial institution if they want to, and jump over to variable for we don't know how long. Obviously, it's hard. It's a gamble in a way, but it just depends on how are you betting.
Yeah, what's your risk tolerance?
Correct.
Okay, so kind of circling back, we're going because I'm thinking like the clients I was speaking with earlier today are asking me about rate.
Yeah.
And they're with one of the big banks, the big green one. Is that what it's called? But
the big green wall.
The big green.
Boston Red Sox. Okay.
Monster.
Hey, big monster.
Big green monster. So they were kind of like, they don't think TD is giving them the best rate.
Okay.
And I said, what makes you say that? Like, and they're like, well, this is the last quote we had. I said, okay, so what are you looking at online that's telling you opposite? Like, well, we see the lowest posted rate they have is it was like 4.4.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, that's not your rate because they're not first-time home buyers coming in at a 5% on an insured mortgage. I said, it looks really good on paper, but, based on your financial situation, because, they got lots of equity that, they've been in the market for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I said, it's likely, you're probably... And I was right. I was like, you're probably getting quoted like low 5s, I bet. And they're like, yeah, that's what we're getting. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I was like, but if I was you, I would just walk across the street to another bank, give them all your stack of documents, and then have the two of them fight for your business. Because I think at this point, like, you're not going to get the 4.4 rate that they saw in the window.
Yeah.
I was like, but I know, and that rate that they're being offered is likely not the best rate that they have in their pocket. And they can actually offer them.
No, totally. They know, and I'll say this slightly because it's in a case by case, and I don't want to speak for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Majority of the times, financial institutions will not offer you their best rate from the first time, especially, and this is where it's difficult because a lot of I sometimes dislike it because it feels like a bait and switch. A lot of what you see advertised is usually the rates that are like insured, like you said, insured rates. So what are insured rates? A purchase when a purchaser is purchasing a property with less than 20% as a down payment. Usually these are insured rates because there's CMHC or insurance on it. And it's not just CMHC, but there's two other institutions that also do this. However, because of that insurance, because of that extra premium that gets added to the mortgage and gets paid, there is some backing that the mortgage companies basically feel like, okay, we can offer a slightly lower rate for this.
They're insulated.
However, and this is where I'm key for it, that extra drop, and this is where it's hard for me to wrap around, because in percentages, you can feel that that's a lot.
Sure.
When we convert it to dollar amounts, it's very minimal. Very, very minimal. But then that being said, going back to your question is, yes, can two financial institutions kind of fight it out for the clients? Yes, that's what we're seeing a lot of right now.
Well, I've seen a ton of it, right? I've seen, like, unfortunately, I've seen people leave the broker channel and go to the bigger banks because they seem to, like, be slashing their rates just to get the business at this point.
Yes, but I have, and you know this about me, I have my restrictions with that.
I know you do. I'm just saying, because their conversation with me was that rate is the most important thing to us right now. Like, we want the lowest rate we can find. And I said, well, this is how you would do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're right. That's, if the rate is the most important thing, you're totally right. The thing is, a lot of the times, the rate is not the most important thing because it can also, even if you think it is, because, and for our listeners, there's products out there for mortgages that are not necessarily black and white. It's not clear, transparent. There's some clauses, and one specifically that always comes to question is called the bona fide clause. Anybody who Googles this, there's some limitations, some restrictions to it. I don't believe some financial institutions have this, but it's not called that, and it's mainly about you're limited into what you can do with the mortgage with that financial institution. I don't know how often they give these out. I know that with the ones that we work, we have to be very specific to request that. And the rate difference is usually maybe a 0.10 of a difference. However, I always say the limitation, in my opinion, is not worth the savings of the rate, because it ends up being like very minimal throughout the term, less than $1,000 for that limitation that you're saving. So yes, they could fight it out, and that's what's happening right now. We're having like a rate war, you could say. But where I disagree is where, if the service has been given from the beginning and it's been great service, in my opinion, I believe the person doing the service deserves the business at that point, even though the rate is less. And I always say it as like this: it's, would any of you or anyone work for free?
No.
And that's not easy. It's you're providing a service for a reason. You have the experience for a reason. Yes, you can walk to any financial institution, and a lot of times that's the first question I ask clients is like, have you talked to your financial institution? They say yes, they say no. Well, have that conversation, see what they can offer you, and then we have a conversation. A lot of the times I will most likely be beating that rate that they initially offer. And that's when
they take yours back to the bank.
Correct. And that's where I noticed that it might not necessarily be a fair fight. And especially because the due diligence having to done, the work having to done, preparing them, explaining to them, explaining the whole process. Like in the past, I had a conversation with a potential client that they had already talked to the bank, and they didn't want to talk to me because they're like, oh, we're already pre-approved. So the realtor I was working with just kind of said, like, just have a conversation, see what you think. And it's just the second opinion. A lot of times, the second opinion. I had a conversation, had a 4-hour talk with them. And a whole hour, a whole hour talk with them. 4 hours. And they told me at the end of the call is like, it's incredible the amount of information that you just gave us in this hour compared to the compared to what we got from the bank that had given us a pre-approval.
Yeah, they just want you in and out, right? Turn and burn, baby.
Exactly, because you're just a list. You're just another line in a list, right? And however, and with all respect, they did end up going with the bank. And the reason why is because I even told them, it's like, look, if I feel that the bank can give you a better rate from the beginning without me touching it, I'll just tell you, stick to the bank. I can answer any questions, happy to do so, because I'm more in this line of work for helping than necessarily like making a quick buck.
True.
However, it's who you're talking to that's important, because it's the training that they receive. It's how up to date they are with the news, how up to date they are with information. I'm just gonna use a quick example that they didn't know. They didn't have a first-time home buyer's savings account. Okay. And I'm like, immediately after a phone conversation, I'm like, tomorrow go open an account, deposit $8,000 each of you, and it saves your income tax for this year, and you can use it almost immediately. Financial institutions let you use it the next day or 5 days after that you can withdraw that funds, which is perfect. You're putting in an offer. Your down payment is not due until like the lawyer's office. As long as you have extra cash for it, just go for it. But again, it's doing your whole due diligence as a whole. Asking the right questions, having this conversation. If it's just a quick 20-minute, 30-minute meeting, and you're just asking for the information, right? It's not a lot that you're providing of service,
anyone
right?
Can fill out a form and submit an application.
Exactly.
Someone that really wants to invest their time in you to help you succeed and to help you plan a future that you might actually be able to start creating some generational wealth or set yourself up for something better in the future.
You just say it way better than I do. That's it, And I should just let you do all the talking. but clearly, yes, that's exactly what I meant. It's just more or less that. But if for whatever reason rates is just the most important thing, just walk into it. Say you want to get a mortgage. What's their best rate? They're gonna ask you for the application. Okay. Don't take too much time. Just go and be like, okay, the other bank offered me this. Can you match it? 99% of the times they'll say yes.
Of course.
And it's because they never offer you their best rate from the beginning.
Those damn rascals.
Hey, they're in it to make a business, to make
and to just create dreams for people's. That being said, the transition a bit. Hot topic rates.
Yeah.
We did say last episode we get into some seller stuff.
Okay.
So this month we're still at about 2.5% month 2.5 months of inventory, sorry.
Yeah.
So technically still kind of in a seller's market. It really depends on the home type, whether it's condo, townhome, detached. But I've seen it out there, and I know some other people have as well, other agents on our team or not. And I've had clients reach out to them and say, Tony, this house has been up for 60, 90 days. What's wrong with it? Why isn't it sold? What are we missing here? And it's kind of interesting because I just had this happen with clients this week. We got a conditional offer that we're in the kind of the midst of right now. And it was the exact same question. They were the ones that said, why has it been up for so long? This thing came up in May. What are we missing here? So I thought it'd be interesting if we looked at it from a seller's perspective. I think obviously we harp on this all the time. Your house has the A, show well, and B, be priced well. Yeah. And your house isn't selling, it's going to be A or B. A lot of the time it is a price issue. But what improvements can a seller do to make themselves stand out in a market where maybe their competition is actually selling and they're just kind of sitting on the market day after day going, well, we're not even getting any showings. What's going on here?
Well, we could jump into the example that we kind of discussed last episode, which was the client that you guys had where
we talked about that.
A previous realtor that had come seen the house said that if they painted the house, they could probably get like what was it, about 800K or 820, something like that.
Yeah, it was low.
And then
they actually ended up getting for sure.
And then you guys came with the experience, and this is where I say like experience is very important. It's not you're everybody that can do these things or can think of these things, but where I was very impressed when I heard this story was you guys went in, basically told the client, like, if you put anywhere between $20,000 to $50,000 in improvements, which I understand not everybody can come up with that amount of money to do so, this is where line of credits can be important, like because you
trusted mortgage broker.
Hey, and just somebody that has gone through it too. But you put about, what was it? I think if I'm not mistaken, it was about 50 something K.
Yeah, it was something like that. I can't give the exact
number, but then the sale price what ended up being 1 point what?
Yeah, it was up there.
1.1, 1.1 million, at least over $1 million.
It was.
So what was the return of that? And yes,
exponential, right? If someone's originally quoting 800, now we're adding another $200,000+ on a $50,000 investment. Yeah, it's a no-brainer, right? And the thing is, and what you said, it takes a real estate agent, they got to have the eye for it to say that you can really maximize the potential if you do X, Y, or Z. But it also takes the willingness of the client then to say, you know what, I see the vision, I'm willing to do it. That's not going to be for everybody all the time.
For sure.
But I think if you have the means and the time, you'd be crazy to turn that investment down. They did this in like 30 days.
But it speaks of the knowledge too that you guys bring to the table for it, and also the vision that you're able to do this. And I feel that this comes from the experience that you've done it before in this ways. But that extra, because like I said, like, and not to talk badly, but like anybody can say like, oh, just paint this, light it up, we can sell it for this. Yeah, it's a quick sale. Yeah. But the way that was done was so exponential. Yes, there was more work involved, but the return was way more. And it was a happy client, happy buyer, because at the end of it, they walk into a home that's completely done. And like you said, it's literally nothing to do. So there's more offers. And I think you guys had multiple offers.
It was multiple offers. It was a holding offer at $999, I think.
Yeah.
Which is pretty incredible, right? Because people are, if you tried to pitch that to a lot of people, they'd call you crazy. But for the right property, it does work.
Yep.
And it wasn't like, yes, there was a lot of painting involved, but it was also, kitchens. There were some countertops. There was a
bathroom. Yeah.
These little things add up. It's, if you look at it, you get one chance to make a first impression on someone.
For sure.
If you walk into a house, and obviously paint is huge. It's one of the best ROIs for sellers on property that you can do, and it's relatively easy. But if you have the means to replace a countertop, to put up a backsplash, to swap out a bathtub or a vanity or something along those lines, like you'd be crazy to think that it's money wasted. Mm-hmm. Because buyers, no offense, not that they're lazy, they just they're spending a lot of money now to get into these properties. Like, they don't want to have a laundry list of things to do, and I've said this before, like millennials and Gen Zs, if they're the ones you're trying to pitch these properties to, they don't know how to do it, man. They don't know where to start. So we come in as a team and say, you can do X, Y, Z, and we have the people. You don't have to source the contractors.
No, you have the contacts.
People, right? And it's just so cool to watch it go from start to finish in that scenario, because it's a huge success story. It's not like it's a bragging thing, because I'm really just happy for the team and the way that worked out.
Yeah.
Obviously for the client, because it just gives us a lot of experience, and it's like a case study that we can take to the table next time and say, this is what we did here, and it really does work, right? We're not just asking you to spend all this money unnecessarily. You could certainly hire someone to paint your house, and it's always a recommendation we have for certain properties. Neutral palettes sell homes.
Yeah.
But other things for sellers too, right? Like staging is still pretty important these days.
Yeah.
Now that it's fall, you want to make sure that your leaves are raked, your house is all prepped for the winter. Like curb appeal is everything too, man. Like the most recent house that we purchased, it was ugly from the outside, and I guarantee you there was a lot of people driving past that thing being like, I don't even want to look on the inside. The inside wasn't bad when we bought it.
I mean, it's the ugly duckling in the street.
Well, yeah, and we've since had the siding completely finished.
That's good.
It looks amazing now. I get comments from all the neighbors all the time. You're like, oh, I love that color. Like, looks like a totally different house. That siding, it did cost us about, I think it was $18,000 when we were all done.
But I don't know if a lot of people know this, but we can add that to the mortgage, right?
Sure. Yeah.
As a purchase plus improvements,
100%.
as long as there's room in qualification.
If you're the purchaser, but if I'm the seller,
oh, for sure.
And I want to, not that I was selling right away, but I would love to know what my return on investment was and something like that too, because I guarantee you it wasn't just face value. Like I certainly put equity into my property doing that, right?
Yeah.
I took the hard work out of somebody else's hands and took it on myself, right?
And it's having, and like I understand, like not everyone will have the means. Sure. And it's having those means to do so, but then it's the return that that project or that improvement can benefit. Like, I don't think, especially as a team, you guys wouldn't recommend improvements that are not necessarily going to have a return on investment.
No,
and it just doesn't make sense, because like there are some things that might not necessarily be as beneficial. A faucet, a light fixture, like
certain things we see. Like let's say you have a less than new air conditioning machine or something like that. If your unit outside's looking a bit rusty, a lot of the time it doesn't make any sense to change it, because if it's running and it's functional, I think that's what people expect from it. They don't go outside and be like, oh my gosh, this is so new.
The AC looks bad.
New house.
Yeah.
Some maybe in a very, very heavy buyer's market that could happen.
Yeah.
But those are the types of things, like usually mechanical systems, that type of thing. Like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Is my motto on most of that stuff. Like, I will say run it into the ground before you replace it. 9 times out of 10, it's cosmetic stuff.
Yeah.
Now, if you have an ugly looking roof that looks like it needs to be replaced, it might be something you want to try to budget for, because it's going to be something that people see as a.
Boy, the inspection is going to bring out of it, right?
To fix too,
yeah, and it's expensive,
100%.
and the inspection will bring it up.
Yeah,
a good inspector will bring it. You don't have no reason to hide that.
So if you're a seller and you're not selling, you're up on 60 days. I would look at my home through a little bit of a different lens, put it under a bit of a microscope, right? Like picture yourself as the buyer walking into that property. Like pull up in your car. Honestly, pull up in your car, pretending like you don't own the place, and like look at it through a buyer's eyes. You get that first impression when you first hit the curb, right?
Yeah.
People are gonna be walking out of their cars, and they're gonna see it from the outside. If your house is less than pretty from the outside, it's a weird vibe and stigma that kind of carries through the rest of the house. As soon as you get inside, and I'll harp on the paint thing a bit more too, but let's say you got a really mustardy yellow or something going on, lots of really deep reds to turn people off. If you did something not white,
so stick to the neutrals, basically.
Cream and off-white, like that stuff's been proven to like change people's moods. You know what I mean? Let's look at it this way. If you swap out paint colors, or you swap out some countertops, everything you do, you're taking a list off the buyer's list. So at what point does the buyer get to a point where they say, yeah, you know what, this thing's done, this thing's done, this thing's done, I don't have to do that. So now I can compromise on the things that I can do down the line. You know what I mean, I can accept the things that I don't necessarily love about the property because you've given me enough reasons to like it. And I think unless of course you have a price problem, if you're looking at it that way, like, you know, painting's not overly expensive when you look at the ROI on something like that. And certainly, like, you know, we've seen a lot of. I have an IKEA kitchen in my house. It looks great. Like, you know,
IKEA kitchens installed properly can look like $1 million kitchens.
Countertops are not overly expensive. Fresh carpet is a relatively easy and inexpensive repair to do. Like, just little cosmetic things that people are going to ding you on. And like I said, A, because they don't want to or they're too lazy, and B, because they just don't even know where to start, who to pick up the phone and call to get it repaired after the fact.
But I find that interesting because I would say that the realtor should be the first point of contact into some of those conversations of like, okay, like, hey, we have to do this work. Okay, here are the connections, you know, but you don't see that all the time. And I don't want to, and I don't, it's not a backhand to any realtors and stuff like that. I'm just saying, like, it's just experience, right? 100%. And that being caring for the client, wanting what's best for them, making those conversations happen, you know, and having those contacts.
We had a bit of a chat about commission off camera that we'll talk about another time, but it's exactly that. Like, you know, we shouldn't be ignorant to the fact that there's a lot of commission involved in the sale of a home. So, like, what am I doing to justify?
What are you doing to earn it?
Yeah, exactly. Like, where am I providing value to my clients? And if you check out my Instagram, I released a video recently, and it's titled like "For Sale Signs Don't Sell Homes." You know, I can't just come along and expect to stick a for sale sign on the front lawn and then have buyers lined up to buy your property.
Well, we're not longer in the pandemic anymore. Yeah, we're not longer in a buyer's market.
Well, and we forget too that, like, every day that goes by, the buyers out there and the sellers too are getting smarter every day. Like, there's so much information out there, right? And a lot of the times, a buyer can know their neighborhood better than the realtor can know it. Yeah. So, like, you know, if I'm coming into the table and they've lived in the street for 20, 25 years, they know the street better than I do. But I can help them, you know, on the inside of their house, tighten up some things so that it is the best house, not just on the street, but in the neighborhood. Yeah. That people are going to say, okay, we got to go see this thing. I don't want someone to come in and say, like, oh, I got a list of 10 plus things I got to do now. All of a sudden, the buyer's looking at it like, okay, you want this much for your house, and then I got to go spend $20,000 to get it where I need to be. Yeah. Like, you're just turning them off, right? It's as simple as that. Like, you just, unless you got someone to try to take you out of the kneecaps and beat you up on price, then, you know, you're better off just putting a bit of your own money into it. But again, on items that, you know, you're going to get a return on.
Yeah. And it's better to be complete, especially right now where we're heading into the market where, like, it starts to slow down in a way of, like, because of how not just the inventory but the focus on the holidays, right?
Time of year is everything. Yeah. So that's a really good point, and that's a great transition because it's something I wanted to touch on. Like I said, the bulk of the deals towards the end of 2024 will be done up until the third week of November. I've been saying this for a long time. The ones that are done between, you know, the 24th and the 31st, 24th of November and 31st of December, like, there's still people that are actively selling and buying out there, right? Yeah. Sellers will say, like, oh, well, you know, maybe I'll take my house off the market because, you know, I've heard that people that are shopping in December are just looking for a deal. Okay. Then that's a pretty... I heard that a lot. And that may be true in some cases because people think that because someone's listed in December, they must be really desperate to sell. There's two sides to that coin, right?
I was going to ask you something, but then it's like, go ahead, because I feel that you're going to get to my answer.
So I would say to that, you know, maybe there are sellers out there that do really need to sell. That's going to be the situation every month of the year. There's always going to be people that really need to sell. Yeah. A seller that has a house that shows well and is priced properly in December, they don't have a lot of competition. If everyone else says, I'm going to wait till the spring, then maybe, you know, the house that was sitting for 30, 60 days all of a sudden looks pretty good. And if you don't have, you know, 4 other houses that someone's going to go see and you got a buyer that wants to put a deal together, you can make that happen. And what I would say to the sellers out there, like, you know, buyers, everybody wants a deal. Yeah. You want the best price for your house. They want to pay the least amount. You know, that is the market. But a buyer who is actively looking in December, that's a qualified buyer. That's not just someone who's out there kicking tires, right?
And it's somebody that's interested. definitely motivated and
Yeah,
like with it.
if someone's skipping family events over Christmas to go look at homes, like they're out there to put something together. So I would treat everything very seriously, and not for some properties, sure, taking it off and trying into the spring is not a bad strategy, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a blanket strategy for everybody that's currently listed on.
But even that, taking it off, like you're taking it out of realtor, yeah, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't show that it used to be there at that same point. Like
for sure.
it's that's not a nuance in the sense of like, oh, you're taking it out, but then relist it afterwards. They're still gonna see that it was in the market and when you took it out.
Yeah.
At least like on your realtor system, you can see it. I don't know if you can see it in House Sigma and all this stuff.
I think so.
But I know that at least at realtor.ca, you could see it through you guys.
Yes, of course, history is going to be there.
Correct. So are you really benefiting from it?
Everyone wants to believe spring is the best time to sell, and the way interest rates are kind of trending down, it very well may be that 2025 and spring does kind of kick us into that spring market that we've known to be true before the pandemic, because we haven't really seen that traditional spring market since then.
Yeah.
But again, sellers forget to more competition in the spring, more people list. There might be more buyers out there, but you've got to make sure your house looks the best.
Yeah.
So you better be painting, you better be touching up the bathrooms, you better be putting in the countertops now.
It's not like you're skipping all this work.
Can't just wait to spring, exactly, and put it all in the back burner and say, I don't need to do that. I'm just going to list in spring and I'm going to sell it for the price I need and I want. It's worth a conversation.
Yeah.
What do you have to lose by having someone come through and say, this is what I would tighten up if I was trying to get, X price. So
it's best to get that opinion that's not biased too, right? Like you want somebody that will basically tell you like, okay, straight shooter and this is what we should do.
Yeah.
And you can agree or disagree. Exactly. And I don't think you should
tell you what you want to hear, fluff you up, and then push my hard conversations down the line after you sign the listing with me, and then I say, well, I was way off. It's actually worth this. I don't do
or list it at the price that they tell you, and then have to
price reduce.
If you don't agree, price reduction.
Price reduce. And I get that, and I've lost listings being honest, and it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but. You watch someone else take a listing at a high price, and then eventually it sells for what you said it would sell for. I don't. My time is important, just like the seller's time is important. You have one chance for first impression, like I said.
Yeah.
You might
as it's true.
Be priced sharp, and be priced, and then be priced sharp and look sharp. And you'll put a deal together. People will notice. Buyers are smart. Buyers are watching everything under a microscope. So we can't just, like I said, throw a for sale sign on the front lawn and make it happen. It's not the way it works anymore.
Yeah, that's fair. It's the market we live in now.
C'est la vie.
Yeah.
What else is going on? We're gonna tell me something. We're gonna wrap it up, but what else?
This is gonna be interesting, but I think we have to put it for the next episode. But the deal that I've been doing for like months closed. I don't think I told you it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Congrats. So that was the one yesterday. You were like, I gotta talk to this lawyer.
Yeah. Last minute stuff. That's what we had to reschedule yesterday. But yeah, like I'm probably gonna talk about it next episode because it'll take us for a little while. But
I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, it was a little bit. It was one to remember. Okay. That's for sure. I will always remember, not for the best reasons, but I will always remember this one. It's things that I did. I did. And it's mainly in a way of like sometimes you sign a mortgage contract and you're not aware of the responsibilities. And that's where it's hard because it doesn't matter how much you explain it. Just pick up the phone, have a conversation. Yeah. And we'll get back to it.
About someone at a bank maybe not understanding contracts or what you're signing, maybe have a broker on your team. That's it.
Yeah, it's very important. So
right?
We'll talk about it next week, though. I feel like if not, I'm gonna keep talking for forever.
The sun is setting today. Yeah, we'll come back Friday. That's great, man. Like I said, nothing too crazy out of the ordinary for me. Hopefully, some good inspections coming up this week, and then there'll be a chill. I love this time of year. There'll be some stuff.
It's holidays. It's a holiday.
Yeah, for me, Christmas comes December 1st. I'm like, Sophie's already listening to Christmas music in the car.
Lisa, if you're listening to this, he's been playing it. He's been playing Sophie music.
So she's aware now. Should Sophie get Christmas music? Is what she'll ask for. But if you recall, last year this time, for the listeners who don't know, we had a pretty gigantic plumbing disaster.
Oh, yeah,
in
you
our
did.
crawl space last year, so we got some making up to do. We had a giant pit in our living room for basically the entire month of December last year, and this year it's gonna be a good one.
It's gonna go good.
Excited.
It's gonna be a good Christmas.
Absolutely.
Christmas. Did you get a Christmas tree already?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, it'll die. We're real tree people, so.
So what? December 1st?
Usually the first week in December, because
Yeah.
like we're as much as we love real trees, we forget to water the damn thing. So then, like,
They
you don't
take
water it, it
they
dies.
take a lot of water.
Oh
I did
God,
my
it's
first real
amazing.
tree like 2 years ago, and like it's the
Shuds it.
quantity of water that they.
But
Yeah.
only for the first little bit. Like they obviously they stop absorbing so much as it gets older. But
Yeah,
yeah, we're real tree people, and it's gonna be fun.
That's good.
I'm excited.
it'll be fun. It'll be a good holiday. But
Yeah, so
let's wrap this up.
That being said, guys, thanks for listening. If you have any comments, let us know. Anything we missed or anything you don't agree with, do agree with. Love to hear us talk about. Don't ever want to hear us talk about. Let us know in the comments. Give us a like and give us a follow. And until Friday, we'll talk to you soon.
See you.
Cheers.
Cheers.